How about eggs or egg whites?
No.
We don't teach a vegan diet. We basically teach people to eat a diet that has a very small amount of animal foods. A lot of people become vegan because they decide to later, but 2 to 3 servings of organic animal food, as long as there's no dairy, it's wild caught or organic, I don't think is harmful. That hasn't, certainly that's the way people around the world who live a long time eat. I think there are some people who are sick enough that they should entertain the idea of eating none, but most people can continue to eat some. And if it will make them do everything else, I'm all for it. In other words, we've got to make sure we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
In my experience, that it's prevented people from having their recovery. I myself was only eating some cheese and eggs. Taking those out were pivotal to my health. And actually, right after I recovered, I hadn't known why, because I'm a doctor. I didn't know my diet had anything to do with it, right? So I had added eggs and egg whites initially, and then I started getting inflammation in my bladder and all sorts of things that nobody could help me with. And then my husband was like, you know, it's weird that came back when you added the eggs back, took them back out, everything disappeared. By the time people see me, usually everything else hasn't worked. So they've tried paleo, they've tried all the other things, and they're still really sick. They don't want to go to the lady who makes them eat raw vegetables first. So in the folks that I've seen, even eating a bite of animal products has kept them from that full recovery. Sometimes they can get better, but then they get stuck where they still have positive antibodies, are not fully recovered. So I have found for the majority of people, they need to become completely plant-based. I had one example from my classes of a man who was symptom-free with minimal medication, with only eating meat once in a while. And then once he removed it completely, within 2 weeks, his blood tests were negative, and he's never had a relapse since then. So I think any step you can take in the right direction is going to be good. But for optimal health and the fastest recovery, even eggs have to go.
How about cooked mushrooms?
No problem. They're cooked mushrooms. I have 3 lectures on our cancer site on the effects of mushrooms on as a form of therapy for cancer, along with a comprehensive plan. So I think mushrooms are great. If you don't like them, don't eat them. I mean, we've tried to focus on the idea that this whole idea that you have to suck it up and eat food you hate because they're healthy, that's counterproductive. But if you like mushrooms, no reason to not have them.
I like them, but I like them better raw. I know people are scared of raw mushrooms, but I've never had a problem with them. So, but yeah, I don't see any problem.
Okay, what about memory issues? What do we do to not lose our memory and to keep it and regain it if we've lost some?
Diet has a lot to do with it, but it's more than that. It's social engagement. It's people who retire early and don't have enough to do. That's dangerous. Hydration, sleep, a whole lot of things. Exercise. So if you want to be cognitively and physically healthy and live on your own until you die, and I've got a almost 93-year-old father living on his own right now, you've got to pay attention to a whole lot of things. He needs, for example, intellectual stimulation, right? So we talk to him all the time, play cards, watch TV together, watch a movie, that sort of thing. So social engagement and learning, use it or lose it for muscles. Same thing with brains. You have to use your brain or it atrophies, right?
Agree 100%. Also, omega-3 fatty acids, they found ALA, which is flax and chia seeds, is important, as well as EPA and DHA, which your body pulls from that. If you're not eating other animal products, your body can break those down pretty well. So they've shown those alone have improved memory function, even in people with Alzheimer's. Avoiding animal products, again, they make a big difference. I was talking to some brain researchers have found the strongest connection between diet and Alzheimer's to be eggs and chicken. I'm like, oh my God, that's what people eat when they're trying to eat healthy, right? So diet makes a big difference. Exercise is one of the only things that can actually increase brain size is exercise. So exercise and then everything else that you just heard from Dr. Popper.
What about eating cheese?
I think, there's only one food group that I think bears just eliminating, and it's dairy. And the reason
Hallelujah.
Too many problems. I mean, we show people it contains estrogen and estrogen metabolites, and it doesn't matter if you buy raw dairy, it doesn't matter if it's organic, and it doesn't matter if you got it straight from the farm, you're still stuck with a product that contains estrogen and estrogen metabolites. And the molecular mimicry aspect of dairy protein and type 1 diabetes, the beta cells that produce insulin, having a close resemblance to, in terms of the amino acid chains to the dairy proteins, I think is a real issue.
Yeah, dairy has to go.
What about fish?
I don't see any reason that people can't have some fish. Again, I don't think it's a matter of which flavor other than the dairy. I think it's a matter of keeping it at a very tiny part of the diet. The Okinawan women are not vegan, all right? They never got that memo. But they eat a very tiny amount of animal food and an enormous amount of vegetables and sweet potatoes and that sort of thing. So a little bit of fish, if it's wild caught in the context of a diet that is almost all plant food besides that, I think is fine.
Again, it depends on how healthy you're trying to be. If you want to optimize your health, you want to avoid all animal products. Remember when I was learning about the different types of cancers found throughout the world, they're different depending on our diets, right? So people eat lots of beef tend to have more colon cancer, but then in Asia where people ate more fish, they had more stomach cancer. So it's kind of like, how often should you smoke in order to not get emphysema or cancer? Well, better not to smoke. So I recommend people avoid all animal products. I mean, fish absorb all of the pollution that rains down into the ocean. They have found them to be positive even for nuclear waste. It's taking a risk. So, and then the parasites, I just don't see the reason when you can have better health without them. But if you're already healthy and you want to use them to get high sometimes, just make sure that it's minimal. Again, it depends on your health goal.
How about grass-fed beef, not regular beef, but grass-fed?
Again, I would say organic and small amounts of it 3 times a week. In other words, this whole idea of eat less of something, nobody knows what eat less means. We use very prescriptive communication. So grass-fed doesn't necessarily mean anything. Organic is much more meaningful if you're going to buy animal food.
If you are going to eat meat, it's a better choice. But if you're trying to optimize your health, then you're going to take all meat out, including the grass-fed. They still are more inflammatory. They drive the inflammatory immune pathways, and it's going to have a higher chance of making you sick.
How about fermented food like sauerkraut?
If you like it, eat it. If you don't, you can live to be 100 without ever touching it.
Same. If you like it, eat it.
Okay. How about cold plunging, jumping into cold water? Is that?
I hope that's not necessary because I can't do it. Whenever I've gone to a spa and they have a cold plunge, I put a toe in and I can't do it. I don't know if there's a health benefit to it. I think that's one that do it if you like it. Maybe.
Yeah. I think it depends on the person. Wim Hof has some very interesting videos about breathing. James Nestor also, and Hof uses cold plunge, and he's helped a lot of people recover from trauma and that sort of thing. Ooh. That way, I don't like it. I hate cold. I'm a person
too. I'm not a fan of cold.
I would live in the hot yoga studio that I own if I could. If the electronics didn't go bad in there, I'd just sit in there all the time.
Okay. Amy, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yes, I'm from New York City, and this question is for Dr. Goldner. Just yesterday, I was diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome, and I know you also had that. I'm wondering, do you still use blood thinners to avoid clots?
Hi, Amy. Where in New York City are you from?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, that's where I was born.
Oh, wow.
Maimonides Hospital.
Oh, wow. Not far away. I'm in Bay Ridge.
Okay, there you go. Both my parents are from Queens. Okay. Anyway, so we're just bonding. So yes, I had antiphospholipid antibody. I developed that back in about 2006, I believe. And it was major. I had high antibodies and I actually had mini strokes. I do not take blood thinners actually, because back in 2005, when I changed my diet, those antibodies went away. And thankfully, with antiphospholipid syndrome, you can track the cause of the blood clots, right? So having antibodies creates those clots. So the antibodies were gone within 4 months. And I continued, I took injections for my blood thinners. And so I injected myself every day. And after a year of no blood clots and no antibodies and no lupus, I finally asked my doctor, so why do I keep taking these shots every day? And he said, because you're treating my anxiety because I'm afraid to take you off them. I went, okay, well, I don't want to make you anxious, but I can't, I mean, because you're constantly bleeding, right? I mean, I'd get a paper cut and I look like something out of a horror movie. So I stopped them because medically I was no longer necessary. And we kept tracking my blood tests frequently. I don't want to die. I don't want to have a stroke. And even when I decided to get pregnant, we tested me regularly and I never had a relapse. If I'd had a relapse, I'll take the blood thinners because I don't want to die. I don't want to stroke. But I've never had a relapse in almost 18 years now, and I haven't needed to take any medicine. What I found in my clients is the same thing. Usually those antibodies will go away rather quickly, like in rapid recovery, often by 6 weeks, they no longer have antibodies anymore. And so oftentimes people will decide at that point not to take them. Other folks don't like the idea of not taking a blood thinner even without antibodies, and they might continue with a baby aspirin or something, or only take it when they're pregnant. That's something kind of personal for you to figure out, but at least you can get rid of those antibodies, which was a huge relief, at least for me.
Roger, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Roger Test, Cookeville, Wyoming. I've heard Dr. Goldner mention the mutual love between her and her grandmother. How long into your career, your health journey did she get to see?
My grandmother passed away 5 years ago at 99. So that same grandmother who begged God to take her life so that I could live when I had kidney failure, she lived another, gosh, almost 30 years, 25 years, and saw me survive, graduate high school, college, medical school, get married, have children. She taught both of my kids to walk. So yeah, it's got to bring up my grandma and make me cry. She got to live and see all of it. Thanks for asking.
Dominic, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hi, I'm from Quebec, Canada. And my question is for Dr. Goldner. I'm wondering what would happen to your condition if you would come back to this sad way of eating, the standard American diet? Yeah, would you get, do you know? Well, yeah.
Well, so it's Dominique, right?
Yes.
You know, one, I'm not going to test it. So I like to speak to results, not to theories, right? Not going to test it. I have no desire to go back to the way I ate before. I have 2 beautiful kids. I've got such a good life. And at 46, I have 0 health problems. So I'm really riding this wave as long as I can. But I mean, theoretically, which is where I hate to swim, but okay. I think that it would take a lot of bad eating to get myself sick again. By the time I got diagnosed with lupus at 16, I was formula fed, given baby food. Chef Boyardee was my private chef, macaroni and cheese. And my parents bought a pizza shop, and I ate pizza for lunch and dinner every day. So, I mean, lupus was built on processed foods for me. So by 16, that's how long it took me to actually be sick, right? Now, by then I was already in kidney failure, but so probably 14 was when I started to get symptoms, right? So now that I've been healthy for 18 years, and I literally live on green smoothies and salads and a little bit of like soups and quinoa here and there, something, I think it'd be very difficult for me to get sick again. If I tried really hard, if somehow there's some new mosquito that makes people want meat instead of the ones that make people allergic, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a potential there for me to get sick, but I have no desire to do that. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I was missing out when I was sick. I'm not missing out on anything now. So and there's always a potential. Now with my clients, if people go off the wagon too quickly, like if they are symptom free in 6 weeks and they go, oh, I'm done, and then they eat a cheeseburger, they often will feel some symptoms. And I use that. I say, hey, you did your research, you're ready to come back, and then they'll come back. So if it's early on in the healing process where it's like you have a newly formed scab over that wound, you can get yourself symptomatic again. But I found once people are healthy, asymptomatic, negative labs for at least 6 months, they can have the occasional inflammatory something once a week or so, maybe, you know, something with oil or something with sugar, and they don't have any symptoms at all.